3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Queen Stage. We're here to spotlight the athletes, stories, and action in women's cycling, giving the sport the attention it deserves. And we're going to do so with the quality, depth, and personality the sport demands.
I'm Rosael Torres-Davis.
I'm Betsy Welch.
I'm Anna Maria Roque.
And I'm Molly Herford.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Queen Stage Women's Cycling Podcast, your go-to destination for all things women's pro cycling. Before we dive in, a big thank you to Ruckus Composites for supporting this show. From repair and inspection to pushing the limits of carbon fiber innovation, Ruckus leads the way in engineering and performance. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you follow your podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating and review. I'm Anna Maria Roque, and I'm hosting today with Rosael, and we're back and ready to dive into another big moment on the calendar, the Women's Elite Road Race at the UCI World Championships. The road race took place this morning, so our opinions, our reactions are going to be super fresh. And we have a special guest joining us today as well. Kimberly Coats, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You want to give us a quick summary of who you are, what you do, and then we'll dive right into the road race.
I have been working in African cycling development since 2009, and I'm currently the CEO of Team Africa Rising.
Now, you watched the road race just like we did this morning. What did you think? What did we just watch?
Holy cow, women's racing is so off the charts. It's so amazing.
It is.
Yeah, it was good. And you were able to also catch the juniors race before that, right? I saw just the finish and it looked so good.
Siga from Ethiopia made history today. That was just epic.
For those who didn't watch, can you explain why she made history?
Well, Siga is an Ethiopian rider. She came from a small club team in Ethiopia called Mesfin, and I have gone back and forth with her mechanic for over a year, and he kept telling me how great she was. And we got her on the radar of the UCI, which the UCI did a special project this year ahead of the World Championships, and she got invited to race in Europe, which was great, and she was embedded with the UCI. It was just fabulous what they did for her, and everybody who's seen her race has been like, she's it. She's the real deal. So she took 7th place, the highest finish ever for a Black African women's cyclist in the junior category. She was amazing. I think she could have won it, just given a little bit more experience.
That's impressive, especially on a course like this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it ended up being so unpredictable. What do you all think of the course? For those who haven't watched the race yet, the course was a 15-kilometer circuit that was raced 11 times in the elite race. What do you all think?
I mean, it would look brutal. That is so much climbing. They had more than 3,000 meters, more than 11,000 feet for you Americans, and that is a lot to pack in, and to do it over and over and over again with those same, a cobbled climb, a paved climb. It was an absolute race of attrition.
100%.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that Kigali, which is the capital of Rwanda, is also at elevation, and it has more elevation than Andorra, for example, where a lot of cyclists go to train. So yes, I think a lot of people suffered due to that if they were not able to get there early to acclimate, or if they didn't do any altitude training during the season.
Yeah, I think it's at the elevation of Denver, right? Like right between 5,000 and 6,000 feet.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit lower than Denver. When I lived there, I was up in the northern part. I lived 8 years in Rwanda, and the northern part of Rwanda was at about 2,100 meters, where we were 6,700 feet, which is where I currently am in Wyoming. But it was a hard race. It was not designed for African cyclists. except for Siga.
I don't think it was designed for most people. My goodness. Look at that, how people fall off. Yeah.
It turned out to be a course for climbers, right? Due to the attritional nature of the two climbs. We had the Cod de Kigali Gulf and Cod de Kimuhurura. They were both close to each other, and between them there was also a cobbled section that was also coming into the climb of Kimuhurura. And yeah, very attritional. And the cobble sector, some riders were saying it was too long, and we saw people suffering there.
Now, before we go into the course and the final details, Roselle, why don't you give us a quick recap of what happened? And we haven't even mentioned the winner yet.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, just to get it out of the way, the winner was Magdeleine Vallieres of Canada. First place, Niamh Fisher-Black of New Zealand was second place, and Mavi García of Spain was third place.
Love to see that.
Yes, I was really rooting for Mavi García, and I know Betsy is not here today. I'm sure if she was watching, she was rooting for Mavi García as well. But yeah, I just also want to say that this race was historic for a couple of reasons. Not only is it the first World Championships that is hosted in an African country, but also we also had the first women's under 23 race happened yesterday, where they had their own race, which is also a very exciting race to watch. And I would tell everybody to go do that. And it's so interesting because the juniors race, the under 23 race, and the elite race were all so different. But anyway, in the elite race, we saw Austria's Karina Schremp. She lit it up in the early kilometers with a solo move, and she had the longest breakaway of the day. For a moment there, we saw Blanca Vass of Hungary, and then Julie van der Velde of Belgium, and Sharon van Anrooy of the Netherlands were also up there. And van Anrooy actually led the race for a little bit after some of the other riders were caught. With 3 laps to go, van Anrooy was still at the front, leading with 30 seconds, and Kerbau and other riders were launching attacks. Then we saw the final breakaway. It was a group of about 34 kilometers to go. It was a group of 8 riders. And at first it was interesting because they did not seem very confident. They kept looking at each other. It was a group of good riders. Mavi García was there. Antonia Niedermayer of Germany was there. Vallieres of Canada, like we said, who ended up winning the race. Fisher-Black, Rihanna Marcus of Netherlands was there. But in the beginning, they were not being very cohesive. I don't know if you two noticed that, but they got it together within 1 lap, I would say. And then, it was 2 laps to go. The favorites in the back were moving to the front, but it was just everything just a little too late. And we saw Anna van der Breggen really suffering in the cobbles. Then that group of 8 riders was reduced to the 5 final riders. The peloton just could not get it together. And that's when we saw Marlene Reuser of Switzerland, who also won the time trial days earlier. And Rook, she was one of your favorites, and she really could have won had she maybe tried this attack a little earlier. Then, we also saw Ferran Prévost, who was one of the favorites. She did a bunch of the work. She was followed by Kasia Niewiadoma of Poland, but just nothing really worked. Then we did see a cool move by Kim Lecourt with 6 kilometers to go. She did bridge up to Marlene Reuser, but it was just too late. And the group of 3 in the front they were working really well together. They all wanted that win. We also saw Demi Vollering of Netherlands struggling in the back in the cobbled section. And then it happened with 2 kilometers to go. The Canadian rider Vallieres launched a fierce attack. She dropped Garcia and Fisher-Black, and she held the advantage all the way to the line to take the rainbow jersey. And yeah, Fisher-Black got second, and Mavi Garcia got third. I thought, it's not what people expected, but I thought it was a great podium, very brave riders who completed that podium. Go ahead, Rook.
So what's interesting too, you mentioned history. This is the very first Canadian world champion at the elite level ever. So, props to her. This is someone who is ranked 147th on the UCI ranking, has had only 1 pro win on her Palmares. And she said in the post-race interview that this had been her goal. Her and the coach had worked on it. They've been to altitude together. She dreamed of this, but 147th in the world. No one saw this come. And like, I think it's cool that she allowed herself to dream of this and then achieve it. But I will say initially, Rosanna, you and I were texting, and I was like, oh man, I'm disappointed, because what I wanted to see play out at the tour this year, we got in terms of all the big hitters were there. Like as we saw in that final reduced group, we've got Demi Vollering, Pauline from Bravo, Marlene Reuser, Elisa Longoborghini. No one's sick. Everyone is there. This is what I wanted to see in France. And it didn't deliver. We did not get the action, the fireworks that I was really, really hoping for.
But doesn't this happen often? I mean, we have all watched so many world championships, but also, important one-day races. And especially when there's no radios, it feels like if you don't commit to the moves, the hesitation just allows for this kind of thing to happen. So I would say, I think people, if you tune in just in the last 20 something kilometers, you may be disappointed with the end result. But I would say tune in a little earlier, like maybe with 40 or 50 something kilometers to go. So you can see how that group in the front, they really work hard. And I think they were really underestimated by the people riding behind.
So just a little unknown fact, the mechanic for Canada is Jamie Bissell, and Jamie lived and worked with us in Rwanda for several years. So he knows these roads inside and out, and maybe some like intel and dialing in her bike for those cobbles, because the cobbles were large. There was lots of gaps between them, and they could have been the undoing of a lot of riders. But I think she was well dialed in. And of course, for me being in African cycling development, of course, I was hoping for Kimberly Coats. And we had talked to her earlier in the week, and she was struggling a bit with the air quality because there was an inversion. You could tell by the cameras, and that it was a little hazy. But she looked good. And I really thought when she did that final bridge, like she's there. And then I think they had too much on them, and they couldn't catch them.
Yeah, I also wonder if the Dutch and the Italians just did maybe too much work way early, because there was a lot of talk about that we will see the real moves come with 2 or 3 laps to go. But these two teams, these two nations were doing a lot of work, and I just wonder if they shot themselves in the foot a little bit.
Well, so they actually said, like going into the race, that they were going to take it a little differently because they knew they were going to be the watch teams, right? Like France and the Netherlands, always, everyone was going to look at them. And they said from the get-go that they would play it a little differently. They would let themselves be seen a little less and ride maybe a bit more defensively than they usually do. Like they weren't sending one after the other up the road. I mean, Sharon van Androoy is going to do what she does best, which is exactly what she did, these attacks and being represented in the breakaway early on. Anna just said she didn't have it. She just straight up did not have the legs today, and that was obvious. Like she got silver in the time trial. She looked really good earlier in the week, and then poof, this course was so extremely hard. And I don't think the TV coverage does it justice. Like just how atrocious it was. Like there's so much climbing and elevation and an inversion. And just the fact that it's so repetitive. It's not one big climb and it's over. It's not like every lap you're going to have to do 2 big climbs. It looked absolutely brutal. It may even be the hardest one that I remember at the World Championships, especially in terms of elevation.
Yeah, I think a lot of riders would agree with that. Also, the course didn't really have any like long stretches for like to put down power for those people who are more like TT specialists, or to be able to put a gap. The only place you could put a gap was the climbs.
Do you think that at like, what was it, a little over 3K to go, they just knew they weren't gonna, they all like kind of got going, like they all being like the group of A-listers, they had some momentum, and then they looked at each other and they were like, nope, this is it.
Yeah, I think at that point, with just imagining the information they had available, which is not a lot, given that there's no race radios. I don't know what information they were getting about the gaps in the front, because what I noticed that happened with this course, because of those climbs and descents, that sometimes the gaps could go as high as 2 minutes. But on the descents, they were able to close it to 40-something seconds. But as soon as they hit the climb again, it was up again by a minute. And, that information is also, the gaps are not being relayed to the riders in the back of the peloton. And it's just annoying because we see this happen so often in Olympic road races and world championships, where you just wish they would be more committed to the A plan. And I don't know if this was the A plan for Canada, but at least in the post-race interview, Magdeleine Vallieres, she was very confident about how she prepared for this race. And, also let's talk a little bit about her. If you guys know anything about her, please let me know. She's a 24-year-old rider from Canada. She turned 24 last month in August. And yeah, she didn't have any major results this year. Let's see, there was an 8th place in the TTT, Team Time Trial Vuelta España. The 7th place in the Canadian Road Race Championships. But yeah, not a lot, like a 14th place in last year's World Championships in Switzerland. But wow, like what? Because she gave it all. Yeah. In those last kilometers.
I hope this is not one of those cases that you see sometimes where someone is a bit of a one-hit wonder. They get the world jersey, they get the rainbows, and then they kind of disappear. I hope that this was just her moment, her breakout, because, like, again, 11,000 feet of climbing. If you can climb like this, surely you've got something else to show us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could be a thing that she's always been in the role of domestique. But after hearing that interview, she was so confident. Also, her teammate, Alison Jackson, who's also her teammate in the trade team of EF Education Oatly, was so happy for her. So, yeah, maybe we just have discovered another rider with like great potential.
And guts. Like, I think what I heard Damie say that she had a really hard time timing her attack. She wasn't quite sure when to fire that last match. Yeah. And so by the time she was like, okay, I need to do it, it was too late. And in a way, Vallieres had nothing to lose. No one was looking at her. Mm-hmm. So this was, and as you mentioned before, this happens a lot at the World Championships. The big riders all look at each other, and those riding in the shadows get their chance.
Yeah. Kimberly, do you have any other highlights or any comments on the race?
For us, we were really just looking for Kimberly Coats. I really had hoped. I mean, I'm thrilled that she has a top 10 in the World Championships, and she has just had an amazing year this year, especially coming back from the wrist injury. And I thought we'd see more out of Ashley, but I don't think she had enough racing days in her legs, especially near the end. Like you said, this course is challenging. And I think if you were super fit going into it, you had your best chance. That's why all the African women outside of Kimberly Coats and Ashley pretty much, I think they were all DNF just because they didn't have the racing in their legs for the season because there's just not enough races.
Yeah, as a storyteller, that is the story we all wanted, right? Like, African rider wins in Africa at the first ever African World Championships. Like, that's what, like, we wanted to write those headlines. And so it was a real bummer that didn't happen. But, she had such a phenomenal season, and I cannot wait what she can do in the coming seasons.
I agree. I'm really excited, and she's really brought it to the forefront for all the other African women because, she came to Europe early, like in her 20s, and it just didn't work. And she went back and did mountain biking. And then she's like, I'm going to give it one more try. And so I think not only does that help for African cyclists, but it also helps as far as age, that women can go much longer, that there's not such a pressure to be 19 and be signed by a team.
Speaking of age, bronze medalist, 41-year-old, like, props to Mavi.
Oh my God.
Love to see it.
Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. What? Oh my God. Talk about a late bloomer. Because not just late bloomer in age, but like she's been in cycling for a while now, and you would think that by now she would be fading after getting a few top 5 in the first seasons where she was pro, but no, she keeps at it and she just keeps getting better. It seems.
I know, like she's always kind of been there. I've written her name as a favorite, as an outside favorite for many years, like because she can climb so well, and you're always like, maybe this is the year. And it never clicked. And this year, suddenly at the Tour, and now this, like, it's clicking for her. Who knew? Past 40.
Yeah. Did any of you catch the interview with Kasia Niewiadoma? She was talking about the altitude. And it's interesting because it gave us some insight on maybe her performance at the Tour de France Femmes avec Swift. That this year I haven't interviewed her last year after winning the Tour de France Femmes. There's an interview I did with her for bicycling. She spoke a little bit about how she was going to approach this year. And she did some changes, and she did less altitude training and training camps than before. And I think she's realizing now, because, these riders are also still getting to know themselves, and trying different things in their training. I think that may have affected her a little bit. We know she did try the altitude tents for sleeping, and she does live at altitude, right? But she didn't go, like the extra mile. And she was talking about how she noticed that a lot of other riders did. And then she was wondering if that's something she should have done. And I'm sure she'll be revising her training for 2026.
There's an interesting point, because she's definitely been sleeping at altitude. That being, she's sleeping in an altitude tent. But we know that, for the Tour, Pauline moved to Andorra, made sure she could climb every day. I think we're getting just so professional and so science influenced that we started to really nitpick what does and doesn't work. Like, altitude tents are great, but apparently not as good as just going to altitude camp.
Yeah, and I think there's just a lot of research that needs to be further looked at by writers and nutritionists and doctors, because I learned something today listening to the commentary that, for example, if your iron levels are very low ahead of a training camp at altitude, it could be very detrimental to your fitness, and it could actually put you in a hole that could last 3 months. So I think there's so much more that we need to understand about altitude training to really get the best out of it.
I did hear just about every rider say something about being kind of off, being sick, something swept through the peloton. Is it the drinking water? Like, what is it that made Rwanda a bit tricky for Westerners, I should say?
Well, as someone who's lived there, it's just, I think, to go there for a week or even just a couple of days before the event is challenging because, you can't drink the water. You just have a lot of things that bombard your system. When I lived there, I remember my first year, I was sick all the time. I just went from like an infection on my toe to a viral infection in my lungs. Like, it was just one after another because you get bombarded by a whole series of other pathogens on the African continent. And I learned early on just becoming obsessive with hand washing and just really watching my diet, watching what foods were washed and what. Like, you have to be pretty on top of it and very methodical about it. And by the end, like, now I can go and I don't have any problems. And two, you also have to consider, did any of them have vaccines? Were any of them taking anti-malarial meds? All that stuff can affect you. A yellow fever vaccine, that lasted on me for a good week. I felt horrible.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you, and maybe this is a good bridge to this, but this year's Worlds, in a new environment, new continent for the first time, it was a highly debated one. There were a lot of safety concerns, a lot of concerns about the cost of traveling, it being such a remote venue. As a result, we saw a smaller peloton that we may have. A lot of favorites decided to sit this one out. Can you talk a little bit about the concerns and whether they're warranted?
Well, of course, I'm going to be biased because my husband and I were the ones that started the Rwandan national cycling team back in 2007. So it kind of led to this moment. So I definitely have a bias on it. But it's funny when they say, the costs. Well, Africa has been shouldering the cost to go to Europe and to go to Australia and go other places for years and years, for decades. So it wasn't that much more to go to Africa. And honestly, for Europeans, it wasn't that hard because it's essentially one flight from Brussels to Kigali or Amsterdam to Kigali. I think Rwanda did a beautiful job so far. Everything has been very safe. I talked to our contact on the ground who's handling all the media for us, and he said, there's a high military presence, but the police are engaged, the military's engaged, everything is very safe, everything is very clean. And honestly, I didn't expect anything different from Rwanda. Rwanda has always been very dialed in on hosting big events. That's really been their forte because they don't that's it, tourism. And so you see Visit Rwanda everywhere and people enjoying Rwanda and feeling safe in Rwanda. And in fact, we work primarily in Benin now, and the Benin Cycling Federation president had said to me, he goes, it's amazing how well run and clean everything is. So I think it's good for other African nations to see this as well. Like Rwanda has raised the bar, so that's good. I just hope in the future that this is really a tourism event for Rwanda, and I'm hoping that they also get back to cycling development because that has lagged for the World Championships, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one just because it's also such an extremely brutal course. And then, it's delivering unexpected winners, at least on the women's side. We didn't have the defending champion. We missed out on some other riders, but I still think we had a very top tier peloton there. And maybe these people next time there is a championship in Africa, they just need to get there a little earlier to get their systems adjusted to the environment.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about, just development in Rwanda, what has been the biggest challenge or breakthrough that you've seen? I guess not just Rwanda, but the African continent and women's cycling?
So women's cycling has grown exponentially since we started. In 2009, the UCI started keeping track of how many the points, so we were able to go in there. In 2009, there were only four African nations that had points on the UCI tour. And that's nothing. It was just a handful of riders. Most of them were South African. And last year in 2024, there was 21. So it shows the incredible growth across the continent. The challenge still is, though, lack of racing. We just don't have enough races. They did the Tour of Windhoek in Namibia, but like the course was like 70K or some of the stages. They were super short. They weren't testing the riders ahead of the World Championships. There's the Tour of Burundi. It's not UCI. GP of Benin, also not UCI. So we're still having that challenge. And in fact, the president of Benin had said to me, he goes, we just have to do local races. We just have to be racing every week. And I said, absolutely, because it's one thing to train, but you all know
got it, right?
Training does not it helps you win races, but you have to race to win races.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, it is that grassroots amateur cycling community that is like the base of this pyramid that helps, elite riders get to where they need to go. But speaking about the Benin national team, earlier this month, you lined up with them at the Maryland Cycling Classic. It was a huge moment for visibility on such a big stage. What stood out to you the most about that experience?
How far we have to go.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm running out of time. I need a few more decades in my life. It made me realize how far we've come in only 3 years of working in Benin to at least get them to this point where they're not off on the first 100 meters. Like we saw unfortunately, some riders in the U23 women's race, they were popped within the first kilometer, which was tragic because they weren't properly prepared, which is frustrating from my end because I'm like, you had 4 years to get your women there. My Benin women did not do well. In Maryland, they made it a couple laps, but that was a hard race in Maryland.
It was very
That was really hard.
Yeah, I don't think they should feel bad because a lot of people. It was like an elimination race every lap.
It was.
People were getting dropped. It was just that was compared. It was the opposite of this course. They're both circuit courses, right? That get repeated many times. But the Maryland Cycling Classic course had a lot of corners. The cobbles, I think, were in worse shape. And yeah, it was just it felt a little bit like a criterium course in the sense that it was like slow down, turn, and put power, but get back on the pedals over and over and over again. So yeah, it was a very challenging race, and yeah, you kind of have to, I don't know, do kermesses or something to prepare for something like that.
So if I
100%, and that's
sorry. I was going to ask if I may be a little bit of a devil's advocate there. If the race was going to be this hard and the preparation may not have been there, why choose that one as their like exhibition race, so to speak? Would there have been a different UCI race better suited for them to show their talents and to honestly just to show themselves, period?
That's an excellent question. And I've been posed that question a couple of times. There comes a point where you have to put them in a situation where they truly understand where they in in relation to the best in the world. And we were very conscious about preparing them. Like, you are racing with the best. I mean, Allison Jackson was in Maryland. So you're racing with the best in the world. So it's going to be hard. I think with Maryland, you made a really good point, is that they've never done a race with this many corners. In fact, they came off saying there were too many corners in this race. So, and for us, it's showing them that, but then also showing the Benin Cycling Federation. The president was like, we've got to do more races. We've got to do, even if it's local races, even if it's crit racing in Cotonou, because Cotonou has cobbles. Like, sometimes you have to show, like, I can scream into the wind for years saying, we need this, we need that, we need this. But until they see it, then they're like, okay, like, we've been pushing the Benin Federation to go younger with the riders. Like, I want to be looking for 12, 13, and 14-year-olds right now. And there's been some pushback on that because they're in this catch-22 of like, well, if we get money from the Ministry of Sport, we have to show results with the elite and the U23. I said, but you're not getting results from the elite and U23. So we have to bite the bullet and go younger. And at this World Championships, I just got off the phone before this call with the president, and he was just like, we need to go younger. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you just got to show them what it is, what it looks like, what it feels like, because they have no idea. And ideally, I would love to have them spend more time in Europe. Europe is challenging because of visas. Now, the US, I mean, these riders all got visas thanks to our relationship with the U.S. Embassy in Cotonou. But now there's an additional $250 charge for visas to America for this country. So, I would love that.
Yeah. Now, that's a very interesting approach that you mentioned, that they do have to see for themselves what it takes, what the level is, and what is the context that they will be racing in, what they're training for, etc. And it's also they're able to go back home and relay that information to the other women they're racing and training with back home. So I do think it has its value, because I could see how some people would see it as negative, like, oh, they're just getting discouraged. And we've all been there. Like, I've been dropped in races. I think everybody should go through that at some point, because it also shows you you can get dropped in a race and then come back. Like, there's it's not the end of the world. But I think it's important, like, in the development side, for them to be able to go back home and tell those younger girls who may be, of like a younger age, like you mentioned, and explaining to them what it feels like and what the level is racing abroad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Africa has been, I feel like it's really up and coming, like the migration races in Kenya, Eritrea, obviously leading in many ways in terms of just the popularity of cycling. Benin, we're in Rwanda. What's next? Like, are they ready for this really big cycling boom that we're hoping will happen there?
I hope so. I think the UCI did a really good job at finding young riders. Eritrea will always be strong. The challenge with Eritrea, though, is just visas, defections. It continues to be an issue. But I think it's like what we saw in Rwanda. When Rwanda came from 0 points on the Africa Tour to ending up first in the U23 men's category in 2018, I think what happened was there was a lot of other countries that went, maybe if we weren't so corrupt and actually invested in our sport, we could be there too, and we could do this. So I think showing that it can be done is really important.
And are there any African riders that you want to like mention or give a shout out to or put them on our radar?
Definitely Siga from Ethiopia. She's going to be significant. Nahom from Eritrea. He got 11th, I believe, in the men's U23, or was it the men's junior? He's a young rider from Eritrea. Eritrea has a lot of really good up and coming. I think other countries, Algeria has a strong investment in their women's program. They have some former World Tour riders, Youssef or Gigi, Azadine Lagab, who are really spearheading the development of the next generation. I think what's important in African cycling now is that the generation that we helped build in the beginning, they're now retired. People like Adrian Niyonshuti, who was Rwandan's 2012, 2016 Olympian, only Rwandan to race at the World Tour level still. He is now the coach of Benin. So you have these Africans who have incredible knowledge and experience, know how it feels to be like the odd man or odd woman out, and they're coming back and becoming coaches. So I think the growth across the board is going to be even stronger.
Do you see them them being the continent, host another World Championship anytime soon?
I don't know. It's going to be a while, but I hope I get to see one or two more in my lifetime. It would be great. I think Morocco would be a great place for a race. Honestly, it's easy to get to from Europe. It's the infrastructure's great. I think it would be a good event.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And next year, the World Championships will be in Canada, in Montreal. Yes. So it's so exciting that we have a Canadian winner.
Definitely.
Yeah, that really will serve to promote the race in 2026.
Do you think she won a year too early? Could you imagine?
Maybe, right? Like, what if she wins twice, and gets to hold on to it? That would be legendary. But we'll see when we get there.
I love that she's going into Montreal as the champion. That's what's great.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So general question for the group, and that is, in general, if you look at the last couple of World Championships we've had, they tend to be extremely hilly. Are we due for another, maybe not like a Doha Qatar flat race, but a more varied race?
I think so. Yeah, because it is difficult, it also is such a big investment for these countries and athletes to get there. I think we need some variety. Have either of you looked at the course for next year? I haven't yet, but go answer the question first. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't. I think we needed another Richmond course.
Yes, that was a great course. Yeah. It had a little bit of everything.
That was a great course.
Also cobbles.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of cobbles lately.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I was there, seeing Peter Sagan and Lizzie Armistead. Oh my God, that was such an exciting day.
Definitely.
All right, so Kimberly, as we're going to wrap up here, what is next for you? What are you working on?
That's a really good question. We don't know. We're looking obviously towards LA 2028. That's a big focus, and how we can help some African riders qualify, some African nations qualify, which riders. So we're kind of already looking for those riders that could do well. We have a junior Rwandan boy that looks like he might possibly go to a professional team, a development team. We're just trying to look for those diamonds in the rough and get them the support that they need, help with visas so that they can go to the next level. We have a great relationship with Bike Aid out of Germany, which is the continental team, which is a great first step, because it's really challenging for African cyclists to go from their country and racing on a national team to racing at the highest levels of the sport in Europe. Culturally, it's challenging. Visa-wise, it's challenging. So organizations like Bike Aid are super helpful because they'll take a rider. Like they took Milkias, an Eritrean who spent this year with them. I think he's going to move on to the next level. So sometimes we need that in-between step for these riders. So we need more continental teams to step up and take some of these African riders.
General question, especially for people that haven't been to Africa, how popular is cycling there? Like when you're out on the roads, like what's it like?
Well, if you ever go to Eritrea, take your bike because it is bike crazy. I've been there a couple of times, and there's one section that they practice the TT on, and you'll have 12-year-olds blow past you on like a mountain bike. They're and literally hundreds upon hundreds of kids out there. Eritrea, Ethiopia is now starting to come back since the war. The war really, was horrific for so many riders, and it's starting to slowly rebound. Places like Rwanda, unfortunately, they still don't have a large professional infrastructure. Like there's not a lot of, I think there's 1 or 2 bike shops around. Yeah, it is like Benin now has this local ride every weekend where they ride along the coast, and it's getting to be more and more. And as you have expats who are embedded in some of these countries working for international NGOs and stuff, everybody's bringing their bikes, and there's a lot of consideration to road development, especially in countries like Benin. We've seen it, like they built a whole promenade along the ocean just for bikes.
And what is the access to bikes like?
Challenging, really challenging. Like I said, there's no real bike shop. There's no bike shops in Benin, not like where you could go rock in and buy a nice road bike. Taxes are really high. So a bike that we might get in Europe for $5,000 is going to be $8,000 in some of these countries based on import duties, things like that. I know Rwanda was working on that to make it more affordable, so there's not such a high tax on some of these things. But it's still tough. Outside of South Africa, South Africa has a large network, obviously.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of hurdles ahead.
Huge. But we're making progress.
We are. And it definitely, the World Championships definitely has showed off Rwanda in a new light. I think most of us did not know what it looked like. We had no idea there was this much climbing. I, for one, didn't know there was cobbles. So, yeah.
You can thank the Belgians for that.
Yeah, and I think...
Yeah.
Yeah, and tomorrow we'll see more of Rwanda because the men's race does a loop that goes into the country, and then they do the laps around the circuit. So we'll see even more. But yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, tomorrow you'll get to see the Mur de Kigali. So that's the infamous climb. So I think they only do it once, though. But
yeah, I think so.
That's going to be exciting.
Will you be tuning in for that one as well?
Oh, of course. Wouldn't miss it.
Same.
Great. Do we have any last words on Rwanda hosting these championships or our new champion?
I'm just excited that everybody came to the African continent. This is huge. This is exactly what African cycling development needed. So thank you all for picking Rwanda, for coming, and just having some exciting racing.
Yeah, and let's hope that Magdeleine Vallieres has a great season in 2026, rocking the rainbow jersey.
Definitely. Let's hope this was only the start. of what
Exactly.
she can do.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, that's it for today's episode of the Queen Stage Women's Cycling Podcast. We'll be back soon with more stories from the women's peloton, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us an awesome rating and review. It's one of the best ways to help more listeners discover women's cycling. Coming up next, we've got a special interview lined up with a rider who's been packing her summer with some truly massive rides. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming on the show, Kimberly.
Thank you.